Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. What's the number you need to hit financial freedom? Well, obviously everyone's number is going to be different. Everyone has different goals, different lifestyles that they want to live when they're in retirement. But another huge factor to consider is the source you go to answer this question. Because depending on the source you go to, the number you get is going to be wildly different. I've had videos where I've talked about Fidelity's recommendation, which is based on having a certain multiple of your income saved up at a certain age, ultimately getting to 8 to 10 times your income by the time you step away from the workforce. Then we have recommendations that are based on rates of withdrawal. The most popular being the rule of 4%, where you withdraw 4% of your portfolio each year adjusting for inflation. The rule of 4% was popularized with the Trinity study, where the authors found that a portfolio of at least 50% stocks and 50% bonds was very unlikely to run out of money during a traditional retirement time span. And over time, people have suggested that this rate of withdrawal could be adjusted up to say closer to 5% if you're doing a delayed retirement, or adjusted down to say 3% if you're going after an early retirement to help ensure the success of a portfolio. But really, the rule of 4% is based on the premise of not running out of money in retirement. And for most people, that is the goal, to not run out of money, but also be able to maintain their lifestyle in retirement. And pinning down the exact amount you need is hard to do because there's a lot of factors to consider. Some are easy to measure, like your expenses. It's going to be your housing, food, transportation, and perhaps any vacations you want to take. And sure, we can make our best guess on how the market will perform by looking at historical averages, but the biggest variable in all of this is life expectancy, and it's pretty darn hard to predict that one. And everyone has different goals when it comes to their finances, what their ultimate objective is with their money. For some, financial freedom means being able to fund their lifestyle in retirement, but then also being able to pass something on to their heirs, to the next generation. For others, financial freedom is simply funding their lifestyle and not passing anything along. Everyone has a different ultimate objective. And if your goal isn't to leave any money behind, you want to hit that sweet spot of not saving too much, but not saving too little. And that's really the premise behind the book Die with Zero. I actually did a full YouTube video on this book because this book caused me an existential crisis because there were parts of the book where I was like, yes, this advice is spot on, love it. And then there were other parts of the book where I'm like, I can't believe this. This is absolutely ridiculous. No one should ever be saying this. So if you're interested in checking that out, I will link it above and down below in the description box. A fun little fact about that video is that the marketing team for this book actually saw it. I know they saw it because they posted about it on their Instagram and tagged me. And when that happened, I kind of had a little freak out moment. Seriously, it makes me sweat just thinking about that. I don't want to hurt people's feelings. But also, some parts of that book, no. I should have been so much nicer if I ever thought that they were going to see it. I never did think they were going to see it. So, whoops. If your goal isn't to leave any money behind, you don't want to leave anything for the next generation or to a charity, you just want to fund your retirement, if dying with zero sounds like a good plan, you have to plan accordingly. And by accordingly, you have to nail down the biggest X factor, which is life expectancy. And a lot of these retirement prep or financial freedom prep calculators lead to people oversaving. Oversaving in the sense that they lead to people having money left over once they die. And the author of the book, Die with Zero, Mr. Bill Perkins, has come up with an equation to help you figure out the absolute minimum you might need in order to reach financial freedom, but still die with zero. He calls this your survival threshold, and this would be the amount needed for those who want to spend their money down, who don't want to leave anything behind, for those who want to die with zero. His formula is pretty simple. You take your annual expenses, multiply it by the number of years you expect to live, and then multiply by 0.7. And that is your survival threshold, or the absolute minimum amount you need to be able to retire. Let's run these different formulas for a hypothetical 65-year-old. We'll assume that he has the average household income of about $75,000, average annual expenses, $55,000, and based on his family history, he's gonna assume that he lives to about 85 years old. Let's first start with Fidelity's multiple of income. The chart that we referenced earlier is actually based on a retirement age of 67. But for someone who wants to retire at 65, we have to use a different multiple of income than referenced in this chart. 65 is considered a slightly early retirement. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom and read the fine print, Fidelity recommends that you have a little more saved up. At this age, they recommend 12 times your annual income. So in this situation, a retiree would need $75,000 times 12 or $900,000 in investments. Next up, let's do the rule of 4%. Since your spending is going to be based off your expenses, simply take expenses, in this case, $55,000 a year, divide by 0.04, and that will give you the investments needed, in this case, $1,375,000. And finally, let's run these numbers for the survival threshold. Remember, for this one, you take your annual expenses, then you multiply by the number of years you expect to live, and then you multiply by 0.7. In this case, that number comes out to be $770,000. As you can tell, all of these result in drastically different numbers. Important to note, Fidelity's multiple of income rule does factor in Social Security. However, the rule of 4% and the survival threshold don't. So if you factor in Social Security, it would reduce those numbers accordingly. So let's run it one more time, factoring in Social Security. Someone making $75,000 a year and retiring at the age of 65 would have a rough Social Security benefit of about $2,385 a month, or $28,620 a year, meaning that they would only need to withdraw $26,380 from investments. Using the rule of 4%, the investments needed for that would be about $660,000. And using the survival threshold, that number drops to just about $370,000. Again, these numbers are drastically different. But what if we had somebody who was interested in an early retirement? How might these numbers change? Let's assume everything stays the same except for our age of our retiree. This time he wants to retire at the age of 50. A word of note, when I run numbers for early retirements, I tend not to factor in Social Security just to err on the more conservative side. And for any initial calculations for the age of 50, there really wouldn't be any Social Security to factor in at that time anyhow. Unfortunately, Fidelity's multiple of income rule is really based on a traditional retirement age and including Social Security. They don't have a multiple of income that they recommend for early retirements, but it's safe to say that if you're going to adjust the age down, you're going to have to adjust that multiple of income up and fairly exponentially. Consider that a shift from a retirement at 67 to 65 moved the recommended investable assets from 10x income to 12x income. But unfortunately, we don't have an exact number to pin down on this one. With the rule of 4%, we'd actually want to adjust down the withdrawal rate to about 3% since it's an early retirement. So this investor would need roughly $1.83 million invested. And with the survival threshold, this investor would now need about $1.35 million. Again, these numbers are quite different. And so much of the disparity between these numbers comes down to what is the objective of the calculation. When it comes to Fidelity, they want you to be able to continue living your exact same lifestyle that you were living during your working years prior to stepping into retirement. When it comes to the rule of 4%, the objective is to make sure you do not run out of money in retirement. With the survival threshold, it's the bare minimum that you would need to continue living in retirement. Keep in mind, the survival threshold as a portfolio is going to have a higher failure rate. And when we speak about the failure rate of a portfolio, that means running out of money in retirement. The creator of the survival threshold states, saving the right amount for retirement is critical, and oversaving can make for problems now and down the road. It can mean missing out on experiences and memories now while you're able to make them, and missing out on the ability to help out children when they need the money. Plain and simple, he's looking at money as a tool you want to get the most utility out of. So you want to exchange as much of your money as you can for as many experiences and memories as you can. And I do think this is a good perspective because money is a tool and you want to use it to get the most out of life. It doesn't really do anyone good to have the most money in the bank account. Rather, using that money to build a life you love is where you really win at life. And yes, the equation for the survival threshold does lead to a lower investment number. But Perkins says that's not a big deal because a lot of people end up oversaving for retirement. 1/3 of all retirees actually increase their assets after retirement. And this is because of compound interest. With each withdrawal, your initial investment amount does shrink. It just doesn't shrink as much as you might think because the interest earns you back part of what you need. This is why you only need a portion of the annual cost of survival times the number of years. Interest will earn you the rest. Which formula you use really depends on your personal situation. What do you want your lifestyle in retirement to look like? And what is your ultimate end goal with money? Do you want to leave something behind for your heirs? Or do you want to spend it all in retirement? But a word of caution, if you're going to factor in life expectancy, I say be a little bit more conservative because it's far worse to run out of money in retirement than it is to have a little bit extra saved. And there's no right or wrong answer. It just comes down to what situation is right for you. Which formula do you like best? Or do you have a better one that you use? Leave your answer in a comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. Or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye.